listening to the Straight to Video podcast with Rob Lane.
Hey, what's happening? And thanks for listening to my show, Straight to Video. If you're new and this is your first episode, then welcome along and hope you have fun. And if you're a regular listener, you'll know how much I appreciate you checking back in and for the great support. So today I am delighted to welcome a real 80s movie icon to the show, Vernon Wells, a guy who has played some of the most iconic villains in 80s pop culture, from the mohawked biker warrior Wes in Mad Max 2, a role that will be reprised in one of my all-time favourite films, Weird Science. Vernon would then also play the amazing role of Bennett alongside Arnold Schwarzenegger in 1985's Commando. This role would see the birth of the line, "I'm not going to shoot you between the eyes, I'm going to shoot you between the balls." Outside of these amazing roles, Vernon Wells starred in Innerspace, Circuitry Man, Fortress, Space Truckers with Dennis Hopper, Charles Dance and Stephen Dorff, and also played the role of Rensick in Power Rangers Time Force. He continues to be incredibly busy in the industry, and a quick glimpse of his IMDb will show a host of films either in the works or set for release. Before we get into our talk, please show some love and support for our friends Dead Skull Coffee and grab yourself a mighty 15% off any order from their website deadskullcoffee.co.uk. Simply add the discount code STV on checkout and that will bag you some money off their wonderful ground or full bean coffee. And for all other episodes of this show, along with music, videos and merchandise, please head on over to stvpod.com where you'll find everything you need, along with details of the Straight to Video Patreon page too if you would like to get more involved in the show. Alright, Vernon Wells was an absolute joy to speak to, incredibly friendly and humble, and so great when people truly embrace the roles that people love them for, no matter how long ago the film may have been. He has lots of love for his co-stars and his directors such as George Miller and the late great John Hughes, so for an 80s nerd like me it was a treat to hear and I'm sure you'll enjoy it too. So, sit back and let off some steam with actor and legend Mr. Vernon Wells.
Is this your party?
Well, yeah, well, kind of. I mean, if you
I don't know if you
call
want
it
to
a
call
party,
it a party.
you know, because...
It's, just a few friends.
How come? Two unpopular dicks like you is having a party.
I don't know. I mean, I guess I was just asking myself that very question, and unlike Dick, sometimes they're the
we're
weirdest
very
things,
sorry.
I don't know.
How would you like all your friends here to know that you wear a bra on your head? Tossed off into any good books lately, have we? You two can't even take a shower with a beautiful woman without wearing your jeans.
How did last week's shoot go? You said you was on set last week. Did everything go okay?
Everything went great. I actually did 2 films. I finished last night on the other one.
Oh, wow. Anything you can tell us about? Any specific projects?
I'm kind of sworn to silence on both of them.
Well, that's exciting stuff.
Yeah, as soon as they knew I was doing a podcast, they went, "Don't say anything." They're like, "Oh, God, okay, fine."
No problem, no problem. Well, you're based out in California, but obviously originally from Australia, where your career started. Is it true you grew up on your grandfather's farm as a young boy?
Yes, I was born in Australia. My mother was a single mother, and I spent most of my early childhood in a little country town called Winalta, which is like a little speck on the map. You'd think it was fly crap or something. It's that small. And I spent my early years there with my grandfather. I grew up with him on the farm, you know, doing all the farm stuff, plowing fields, humping hay, you know, doing all that stuff. And having a jolly good time, as a matter of fact. I enjoyed it immensely.
What was your grandfather like? Was he a good role model?
He was wonderful. He was an amazing human being, very intelligent man who instilled a lot of the things in my soul that I am today. You know, he had a philosophy of life that if you didn't know he wasn't, you would have sworn he was a Buddhist. He had that wonderful philosophy of everything. He would say to me that if you want to be known as the smartest man in the room, hire people that are more intelligent than you to surround you. So he had these wonderful wisdoms that you kind of take with you into your everyday life.
Was he around when you started acting?
Unfortunately, he had passed away from cancer. And that was way back before I ever got into acting. Acting was the furthest thing from my mind when I was a kid. I really did not look forward to being an actor in any way, shape, or form. My mother was a songwriter, and she wrote songs, country and western, people like Slim Dusty and people like in Australia. And I kind of was the only one in the family that followed in her footsteps, but it wasn't into acting. It was into working with rock bands.
Because she was a singer, right?
Yes, I was the lead vocalist, and it was this sex, drugs, and rock and roll. You know, it was kind of more sex and drugs and rock and roll, but hey, it was a lot of fun.
When was that then? Was this around the time of the Beatles and Stones, or just after that?
Yeah, it was around the early 60s, mid-60s, when the really good rock and roll was in, and the Beatles and all that. You know, it was when the English invasion first began. You know, you started to get groups coming in. And it was around that time. And Australia started to develop some amazing groups at that time as well. You know, Little River Band, people like that. It was just one of those eras that come along once in a very long time. And I just happened to be involved in it when it started. So I was, just a lucky one.
Awesome. What was the name of your band?
Incas Inc. It was INCK Inc. But it was Incas Inc., Incas Incorporated, which was kind of a dumb name, but that was, we couldn't think of a good name at the time.
It's the hardest job. You can write all the songs and do all the practicing, but coming up with a cool name is like one of the hardest things.
I know. It's just, I think we had more discussions and arguments about a name for the band than anything. It was like, oh, dear Lord, just the most ridiculous things came up. And then one day we just sort of went, why don't we call ourselves something that's incorporated? It was just, I don't know, what do you want to call yourself? And it got into this silly thing of different shit, and we came up with Inc. We went, oh, how about Inc. Incorporated? Sounds terrible. Okay. Then it got to be Incas, INK''S, Incas.
How far did you push the band? Was you playing quite far afield?
We played all around Australia. We were pretty much traveling all the time, which was kind of ridiculous. We were always somewhere. Because Australia being so big and with such little amounts of people, there's just the areas where you go to where there's the population, and then there's the areas you go to where there's 3 men and a dog, and maybe one of their cows drifted in to listen.
Travelled for like 12 hours to play for 4 people.
Yeah, and sort of go in and play for these people who looked at you like you're insane, that kind of thing. Yeah, it was fun. It was a great learning experience, actually.
Was there any kind of record label interest at any time, or did you do much recording?
If we had have kept going, there was, but like everything, we were all young, and we had a lot of fun while we were doing it. We're all, you'd say, scallywags, and we got up to all kinds of mischief. We drove our manager insane. I think he wanted to either kill us or commit suicide at times.
That's the manager's job. They've got to keep all the chaos.
Trying to keep us under control, which was no way it was ever going to work. And we did some demo tapes and things, which my mother kept, every demo tape that we took. And that was basically it. Nobody actually followed up because, once again, it wasn't that big a deal for us. We weren't looking for the fame and everything. We were just having a lot of fun doing what we did. And then eventually, we all drifted off. I drifted off into working with a couple of, now you'd call them super groups. Back then, it was just a lot of studio musos that were doing stuff, and we just sort of all got together and did shows when there was the work. We just all drifted off. It's quite funny you ask that, because in the last 12 months or so, I've been contacting all the old band members because I want to put a film of what we got up to, because some of the stuff we did was hysterical. It was just like 5 numbskulls.
Is it very Spinal Tap?
Yeah, that kind of thing. Yeah, totally irrelevant and ridiculous, but we had a lot of fun. We did a lot of stuff that nobody ever got hurt. That was the point. We just did stuff that was totally out of control and drove our manager mad. I was talking to the ex-bass player one day who's still a good friend, and we were chatting about stuff. And I said, what, we need to put a script together with all the crap that we got up to just for the fun of it, and see if we can come up with something that looks like it might be interesting and maybe do it. And he, being in Australia, he started connecting with all the guys in the band that we hadn't spoken to for a long time, talking to them and putting stuff together. And then they started ringing me, which was really cool. And we had chats. It's one of those things that you wouldn't believe half the stuff we got up to. And I don't think we do.
Different members remembering different stuff that you'd forgot about.
Yeah, it brings up all these old memories of stuff that we did, the fun stuff. It was just, we used to play for the Army all the time. We were their favorite band, but we played for the Tank Corps. They're seriously way out of this world. They're on some planet we haven't visited. I mean, they are totally insane human beings. And so it was a great match. It was a match made in heaven, them and us, It was like the totally ridiculous thing. And we ended up one day all running around in this brand new tank that the Army had got because all the tankies were drunk and we were as stupid as they were. And it was like 2:00 in the morning. I mean, you want to have a drive in our new tank? And we were like, oh, that'd be really cool.
Best idea ever.
Yeah, greatest thing since sliced bread. Let's do it. And it was just ridiculous. How we didn't get caught and get court-martialed, stuck in jail for the rest of our lives, I have no idea. But we got away with it. And it was just that kind of thing that we did that was, to us, a lot of fun.
Flying by the seat of your pants, you never know what's going to happen next.
And it never entered my mind to be an actor. I wasn't pursuing an acting career. I just, born on a farm, rode horses, drove tractors, drove everything, shot everything. It was, country boy. And when I went and lived in Melbourne, of course, I got drug into doing some extra work, basically because I could ride horses, drive anything. So that was to me was as boring as all shit, to be blunt. And I just didn't like it. Every time they pointed a camera in my direction, I put my head down or hide behind something. I hated being on camera.
Was it through a theatre production you got spotted and put forward for the role of Wes in Mad Max 2, The Road Warrior? Was it through theatre that came around?
If I'd had my way, in all seriousness, that never would have happened because I refused to do it. I was like, no, I don't want to do it. No. It scared me.
They must have seen something in you, though.
It was the first thing that I would ever do that was major. I'd done a couple of television guest star things, but, that's nothing. I mean, you're on screen for maybe 7 minutes in an episode, in an hour show. You're not on screen that much and you don't have a lot of dialogue to do. And I didn't really like that. I was doing it because what fascinated me was what happened behind the camera. Not what happened in front of it. I was fascinated with the behind the camera stuff. So the being in front of the camera was not my ultimate goal. And then when I got asked to do a stage play called Hosanna, which was written by a French-Canadian writer. It was about the fact that Montreal wanted to secede from Canada and become an autonomous French-speaking state, basically. And the French government put their index finger in the air and said, to you too. So what this play was, it was written by a very famous playwright, Michel Tremblay. He had a transvestite and her boyfriend, and it was a two-hander, and it was about a night in their lives where the boyfriend set up the transvestite, the girlfriend, on her one thing that she wanted more than anything in the world, he destroyed. And so he played me as the government, her as Montreal, being set up by the Canadian government and what their dream was to secede and to be a French-speaking autonomous place. I never wanted to do it. I mean, my God, the minute they mentioned transvestite to me, I turned and walked out the door, excuse me, I fight bulls for a living. I don't need to be called gay.
When was this? Was this the very late 70s?
Yeah, my brother talked me into doing it, and not that I wanted to do it. I was seen in the play by Sandy Gore, who was at that time our beloved director's girlfriend. In Australia, they had this thing that once a month, one of the plays that was running would do a midnight showing for all the other actors that were in plays in the city, so they could all come and watch. And she came to the one we had and rang George and said he had to come down and see me because, And, of course, George came down to see me, which was scary as hell. I really had no idea why he wanted me. And the funny thing was that my manager rang me and said, George Miller wants to have coffee with you. And I went, who's George Miller? And she said, he's the director of Mad Max. And I'm like, what's a Mad Max? And she said it was a very successful film. And I went, oh, never saw it. And she went, oh, dear God. She said, it's playing at the drive-in. Do yourself a favor. Go and see it before you go to coffee with him. So I roll up to the drive-in and they're playing Mad Max and Duel. Remember the original Steven Spielberg film?
Every time it's on TV, you have to watch Duel because it never gets old.
So I go to the drive-in and Duel's playing and Mad Max is playing. And next morning she rings me and she said, "So did you see it?" And I said, "Yeah, I went last night." She said, "Great. What did you think?" I said, "Duel was the most amazing movie I have ever seen. My God, that was fun." And she went, "Uh-huh. And Mad Max?" "Oh, yeah, it was okay." It was like, please, God, don't let him be like that. So I actually had the wrong impression. And when I went and spoke to George, we told stupid jokes to each other and carried on like a pair of idiots. And he went away and I sort of went back to my life because I was actually directing commercials at that stage.
You're already behind the camera at that point.
Yes, and I was really happy. And, I loved being behind the camera, doing that. And it was like, yes, I love this. And then Sandy Gore happened to, I guess, get under his skin because of the stage play. And he decided I was Wes. And I didn't want to be Wes.
I mean, what do you base that on? It's a character like no other. You can't say, oh, it's got to be like this. Or how much of him was on the page and how much of it was actually you?
George says that I took 25 lines and turned it into a movie. I say that George Miller took an idiot and turned him into an actor. Someone was talking to me last night, actually, about this. It wasn't a podcast or anything. It was a friend. And we were sort of just talking about it. And he said, what was it like working with Mel and George and everybody on the film? And I said, when I put it all together now, many years later, it was George, Mel, and 2 or 3 of the other seasoned actors in that film who turned me into who I am. They had the courtesy to pick up this bumbling wreck and put him on his feet and say, "We'll get you through this, dude. We'll get you through this." And Mel was the nicest of all. I mean, he would just be there all the time whenever I needed anything. And George, he virtually let me play havoc. I mean, if I said to him, "What do you want me to do?" He'd just look at me and I'd go, "Oh, okay." So he just allowed me to create that character from what material we had and from all the pre-production we'd done and run with it. That was the result. I mean, it was just raw, unabridged stupidity more than anything. And I was terrified. And so I figured if I yelled a lot and had big eyes and tried to kill everything in front of me, I'd probably succeed.
How was it seeing it on the big screen when it was finished?
It was funny because I was fortunate. George had me I had to go up and do some voice work in Sydney. And then I went back to the studio where they were editing and I sat in on an editing series with George and watched what he did. And that fascinated the bejesus out of me. I was like, wow, this is so incredible. And I think right there, doing that was where my love for film came, because I was not watching the unreal part of it, which is standing in front of the camera and doing your thing, because you see no end to it. You don't see what the product looks like. Being in that editing studio and seeing the pieces that George was putting together, you were like, oh my God, this is so incredibly good.
I guess all the pace of the film starts to change.
Oh, yeah.
You see it all coming together.
You see what the end result is. You see what all those pieces you did and all those pieces that Mel did and all those other pieces, how they fit together and make a whole. And that was the point. When we had the screening in Melbourne, they did a big screening for the cast and crew and everything, because it was shot in New South Wales and South Australia up on the border. So I was invited to go and I went and I took my mother, who was my biggest fan all my life. No matter what I did, my mother was my biggest fan. So I took her along, and it was actually very funny because every time I came on the screen, she'd stand up and yell and everybody'd look at her like, are you insane? That's the bloody villain of the whole piece. And she just loved it. And she had so much fun. And I think from that, I understood what it was I was doing. I began to understand what the magic was. And it took those couple of things to make me get the point. And of course, after I'd done that, I went back to directing because, to me, it was my 15 minutes of fame. I'd done it. I'd had an amazing time. The character had turned out to be wonderful. But I was back directing commercials and doing stuff. And then Joel Silver rang my agents and wanted me to come over to the States and do Weird Science.
Do you want to play that character again?
play that bloody character again. And I didn't want to do it. I said, no. I said, look, I've done it. You know, people don't want to see it again. You know, it's ridiculous. They've seen it once. Let's leave it lie, you know. Nah, nobody wanted to let it lie. And I got my butt drug over to America to reprise the role. But what was fascinating for me in America was the first time I came here, I'm a little kid from the bush, right? I get an amazing stroke of luck in being put into one of the major films of that era, you know, like Mad Max, Road Warrior. My aspirations are all at a certain level because of where I come from. I get to America and I'm like, what the fuck? We had, you know, the rocket that goes through the roof that they set up. I'm in a studio looking at a full-size house that comes apart in 3 parts to be filmed in, and a full-size rocket going, what the? In Australia, they made films with 20 cents and a bit of baling wire and spit and good luck. And here they've got all, and I'm like, what the hell is this? And it was just so fascinating that I couldn't get over it. I was like more entranced into what this whole process was with all of this stuff and all of these people.
Where did they shoot that film? Because I know John Hughes shot a lot of stuff in Chicago, but was it in Hollywood?
It was shot in Universal Studios. It was actually funny because being who I am, they brought me over and put me up in this big hotel. They call it the Black Tower. It's on the hill just outside the gates of Universal, and it's up a hill. And I thought, oh, this is really cool because I can walk down the hill every morning to the set and get exercise. Oh, no. They sent a limo for me. And the first morning I walk outside and the gentleman standing out there at the door limo, and I walk straight past him. He goes, excuse me, Mr. Wells? And I went, yes. He said, this is your limo, sir. And I went, where are we going? He said, to the set. And I went, the set's just down there. He said, yes, sir. And I couldn't get this thing to function in my head that I was actually going to be driven down the hill to the set. So I said, no. And he said to me, well, it's actually my job. If I don't take you down in the car, I will be fired. So I went, okay, we got to sort of figure this out. I said, tell you what, I'll walk down the hill. You drive down beside me. When we get to the bottom of the hill, I'll get in the car. You drive through the gates to the set, and that way you've done your job. And he went, okay. So that was what we did for like 2 weeks.
Did you get much chance to interact with John Hughes himself?
A lot of times to interact with John Hughes. I loved John Hughes. He was just such an incredibly nice human being. I've had this incredible fortune. You know, George Miller, incredibly nice human, just one of the people you want to be around. Steven Spielberg is an amazing man to be around, just great. John Hughes, one of the best, you know, to be around, just so kind and generous, more interested in what you're doing than what they're doing, which was the fascination of it all, that you could never get them to tell you, you know, because he fascinated me with the fact he'd done all the angst movies for the younger generation. And so I had a lot of fun with him. And also in that movie, if you remember, we had about 6 young actors that went on to become major stars. One of them went on to win Academy Awards and things.
I mean, Robert Downey Jr., could you imagine him going on to be such a massive star? He only has a small role of Ian in Weird Science.
Yes. And it was just fascinating that I was with all these kids, and most of them had been in other John Hughes movies, and they were like this box of annoyance. I mean, every time you opened it, they actually all jumped out and started doing shit. You know, it was like, oh, dear God, shut the box, shut the box. It was just so much fun. And I thought that was it. When I finished, all I wanted to do was go home. I was homesick, and I'd done the film, and I wanted to go home.
Did you get on with Michael Berryman well on the set?
Oh, Michael and I became firm friends and still are. And it was funny that here it's different to over there, because over there people do not kind of make it a big deal if you've got birth defects. It's really up to you as a human being to establish your parameters. I was told, they said, you know, you want to be aware that Michael has these things, and when you look at him, don't sort of go, you know, make it a big deal that it's sort of horrible or something. And I'm thinking, dear God, what am I going to see with this man? You know, this is scary shit. And when I met Michael, he was the most gentle soul. And the first thing I did was cuddle him. I just gave him this big bear hug. I went, man, I love you. And we just got on from that moment on. And he was him. And what the exterior was didn't matter. It was what was in his heart that mattered to me.
He's a very warm individual from what I could tell.
Yeah, he was a noble soul. and still is. He's just a wonder. I see him every so often when I'm doing conventions. I'll run into Michael, and we have a great time together. As always, he's just such a sweet man. But the whole cast I got on with. I mean, I was very fortunate. And the one funny thing about it was that Joel Silver's secretary was this amazing blonde, about 5'9". She had aqua eyes, that amazing purple color. And every morning I had to walk past her office, and I would go in and I'd throw myself on a desk and I'd just go, marry me. And she'd just slowly push me off the desk and say, I'm married, dumbass, get off my desk. And it was a game every morning. And I'm very cuddly. That's probably your upbringing. When you meet people, you cuddle them because it's this thing, hi, how are you? Good God. So that was what I was like all the time. And if we were off for a day, when I came back, everybody got a cuddle because I was going around saying hi. And I came back to the set, and they had got a new girl behind camera. She was the assistant camera operator. And I went up to do it to her, and she put her hand on my chest. She said, get out of my face. And I went, oh. And I sort of backed off. And I thought, maybe everybody has that same opinion. I mean, I don't know. I'm here in America. I'm not an American. And they've just been accepting it because I'm one of the stars of the film. And they don't want to, put their jobs in jeopardy. So I just sort of went into a corner and sat on a chair. Didn't even talk to the other actors whom I was always playing with. I just got very quiet. That went on for 2 days. And Joel's secretary came in, and she looked at me and she said, come here, you. And I walked over and I said, yes. She said, you're in trouble. And I thought, uh-oh. Someone's complained because of what the big cuddling thing. And I went, look, I'm so sorry. It's just the way I was brought up. And I won't do it again, I promise. And she just looked at me and said, what the hell are you talking about? And I went, what are you talking about? And she said, the crew has all complained because they don't get their cuddle. And if you don't do it, they're all going to quit. And she said, and by the way, if you're not in my office tomorrow morning begging me to marry you, I'm telling Joel to fire your ass. And it was just this whole changeover of how misunderstandings develop into this whole thing. Because I just didn't want to be, the guy who was annoying everybody. And she said, no, everybody loves the fact that you're so open. So, just get back to doing it. So that was one of my eye-openers in America. It's a funny place in its own way. You have to learn to live with it. I have friends. My girlfriend at that stage came over to the States because when I came back to do Commando, she came over to visit me and stay for a week. She lasted 3 days.
Wow, right.
And she went home. Yep, she was terrified. She couldn't handle it. She just had to go home. She got on a plane. She went back to Australia, and that was the last time virtually I saw her because I stayed here, to do what I was doing. But it is a complex place until you understand it. I love America and Europe because you're all like me, I can do what I like, and everybody's I spent time in Ireland. I did 2 films in Ireland. You're all bloody idiots, truly. I mean, if you can't drink, don't go to Ireland. It was real simple, and I don't drink, so they all had a great time with me. But it's that difference of they're all, open and, what are you doing? How are you going? Come out and have a drink with us. We're going to go bowling. They don't do that here. It's more closed, that's like, stay away from my space. And it takes time to get used to it. You have to accept there are boundaries and that you can't step inside those boundaries till you're known or until it's a friend. I do it with all my friends. I cuddle all my friends. But outside of that, you've got to be very aware that you can't do these things.
You come back and you do Commando. So you've done Mad Max 2, Weird Science and Commando. You're on like a real streak now. Where was your head at? Was you coming around to the idea of the whole movie star game?
No, I was just sort of going, this is weird. And the main thing in my head was, damn it, I can't do the bloody commercials. I should be home directing. It was like none of the, you're on a roll, you're doing major movies, you dumb shit. And when I did Commando, it was funny. The thing about my career is that, like with Mad Max, I was terrified to do it and didn't want to do it until the circumstance prevailed and I did it. Commando, I went and did an audition. When I was here doing Weird Science, Joel took me out and took me around to some of the casting places and introduced me to the director of Commando. And he said, no, I'm not interested in using him because he's going to Mad Max it. Truly, it didn't worry me in the least. I was like, well, that's fine because I can go home and go back to what I do. And about 3 months after I had left Weird Science and come back to Australia, they rang and said, we need him to come over and do Commando. And that became a whole schmozzle because nobody could find me. I kind of vanished into the woodwork. It took one of my buddies who actually shared my house with me to find me. And, I was off shacked up with some broad. And he's eventually figured out which one it was and got me to ring America. And I didn't want to ring America. I was like, I don't want to ring America. And he said, a gentleman named Joel Silver's very insistent. And I went, so I rang America, and virtually all he said was, there's a ticket for you at the airport. You got 24 hours to be on the plane. And that was how it started with Commando. So I arrived. They'd been shooting for 2 weeks, and I don't know the circumstances. I never asked the circumstances. People have tried to tell me the name of the actor, and I don't want to know it. It had nothing to do with me, so I wasn't interested in that side of it. But the actor that was portraying the role had done things and been asked to leave the set, basically. He'd been go away. Then Joel said, we're going to use Vernon. You had your choice and it didn't work. So now, and it was between the other guy and Arnold. Arnold was going to quit if they didn't get rid of him. So I came on, and it was so funny because I only sort of took one look. I was half asleep. I'd been on a plane for 12 hours, got off a plane, had 3 hours sleep, got out of bed, had a costume fitting with clothes that didn't really fit me, had my hair cut and my beard shaved off and all this kind of shit. And I'm just sort of like, and Arnie's like, Joel, seriously? And I'm walking through, and it was the first thing I did was the scene where I have the knife to his throat. He's chained to the table. I said, if I had my way, I would have cut your throat. And I'm sort of walking through, and I look at everything. I'm one of these actors who I have to know what's going on, because of the fact that I've been behind the camera. So I want to know where the camera is. What frame are they shooting? What's this? What's that? Where's the lighting? So I can be in it. Anyway, sort of upset Arnie. He thought and he said it in front of Joel. It actually was a little loud because I heard it. He said, I don't think this is going to work. He's a wimp. And I went, okay, we may have to change your mind, young man. And Joel was being very polite, and he said, well, you know what, Arnie? Let's just do this scene. If it doesn't work, we'll close down production. We'll recast. So when the director said action, I just leapt on Arnie, and I had that knife so far up his Watson. And when it was over, Joel walked over and he said, so do we close down or what? And his only words, and Arnie will tell you this, his only words were, never give him a real knife. And that was it. We became firm friends after that. He said in an interview, he said he is the most generous, sweet human being until you say action, then he become a total lunatic.
I love
that.
So
it was kind of fun.
I recently found out, wasn't Gene Simmons originally involved in the whole Commando structure?
It was Gene Simmons. Gene Simmons owned the rights to the movie, and he was going to play that role. And for some reason, he had forgotten about it, and it went into turnaround, and Warner Brothers bought it. And that's when it became Joel Silver's. And I ran into Gene Simmons probably 2 years after I'd done the film at a party. And I'd done a movie with his wife. And she had, for some reason, it was rather violent scenes in it with me being a husband who was possessed with her. And she did something that I thought she was cheating on me, so I was beating her up on the bed. And we choreographed it, and she turned into me slapping. And, of course, it's very difficult when your hand's coming down to stop it. And I hit her in the face. And, of course, she was all upset and the whole thing. And I filled her dressing room with red roses. It cost me a lot of money just to try to appease the situation. So when I was, Gene called me over. And Gene is a big boy, by the way. He's 6'4". He's a big mother.
Even without the kiss boots, he's still pretty tall.
Yes. Oh, no. He was big. And he sort of looked at me and he went, I have 2 bones to pick with you. And I went, uh-oh. And I said, yes, Mr. Simmons. And he said, number 1, you're the only man that's ever struck my wife and lived. And it was his girlfriend at that time. And I went, oh. And he said, and the second one is, I owned the rights to that film and you did it. And I thought, oh boy, here we go. And he went, you know what? No one could have done what you did. I'm glad you got it. And he was so gentlemanly about it. I was so happy. He was just such a nice guy over it. He wasn't being all bitter and mean. He was like, no, dude, you did the role the way it should have been done. So, you can't knock that. But yeah, it was a funny experience doing that film. And once again, when when it was over, I went back to Australia.
Yeah.
I was going home again.
Take me home.
I was out of here.
You've had such a varied career and played some really wonderful characters. Plughead in Secretary Man. You also starred opposite the legendary Dennis Hopper, Charles Dance, and one of my favourite actors, Stephen Dorff, in Space Truckers in '96. How was it working alongside those? Because that's some stellar casting right there.
That was one of the movies we did in Ireland. I love Charles Dance. He's another one that's like 25 feet tall. It was so funny that him and I, true story, him and I really got on. Like as I said, Europeans are, Australia's half bloody English anyway. So we got on like a house on fire. We had the same personality, the same irrelevance about us that we were very laconic and had a ball. He would drag my ass into every scene he was in. Like I would be there. If you watch the movie, you see me turning up and everything. And the director finally, who was a friend, said, "Okay, you two, enough." he said to Charles, "Vernon doesn't need to be in every scene you're in. For God's sake, does he go to the toilet with you?" And Charles went, "Only if I need him." And I mean, it was obvious. I kept turning up in all the scenes. But he was so easy to work with. I mean, he was just such a nice man. And the difference between him and the Americans was that they don't get the jokes.
It's a very different sense of humour, yeah.
We could say shit to each other and then just crack up and walk away. And they would look at us like, what? They don't get the jokes because their humor's not that subtle. So I had a ball with him. I loved it with him. And the funny thing is that the stunt coordinator on that film was a Japanese gentleman named Koichi. And a couple of years later, I got asked to audition for a kids show. And one of the producers was Koichi.
Everything you do seems to roll into, you never need an agent.
Yes.
It's who you know.
I know. It's this weird thing of it all falls in on top of itself. You walk into an audition and you look at something and you go, "What the hell are you doing here?" And they go, "I'm directing it." What? And so it's that thing that the streak keeps going. I mean, now I work continuously, but it's for a lot of the same people. They'll ring up, the producer will ring me and say, "Hey, Vernon, what are you doing?" "Nothing." "Oh, good. We're doing a movie. I'll ring Joseph, my manager, and talk to him. We need you for a couple of days." It's that all the time, And then there's a group in Cincinnati, this wonderful female director, writer, Lana Reed, who puts me in everything she does. She says I'm her lucky charm, that she has to have me on set. So I get hired every time she does a film. And it's that kind of thing. I really don't need an agent because I'm always working. My agent tends to say that to me a lot. "You really don't need a bloody agent. You get all your work yourself." It's like, well, I can't help it. I'm sorry. I'll stop working for people.
Was the role where you knew the producer, was that the Power Rangers?
Yes. And that was ridiculous because I was actually in Las Vegas doing a talk show, Vegas by Night. I got asked to come from Vegas back to Los Angeles by my agent to do this audition for this kid show. I'd never seen it, had no idea what it was. Walked into the room and the room was full of all these people I'd seen on television. And I'm like, what the hell am I doing here? It's just these wonderful people. And I walked into the room to do my audition. Of course, Koichi's sitting behind the chair. And I looked at him and I went, "Koichi?" And he said, "Vernon." So I did the audition. 2 days later, I got asked to come back for another audition. And I walked into the room and it was a lot less people in it. Still, all these people I knew from television. And I'm like, okay, this is getting scary. And I did another audition, went back to Vegas. And about a week and a half after that, my agent rang me, said, "You need to come back for one more audition," because the executive producer had had the flu and hadn't been at any of the auditions. So he wanted to see your work. So I came back. There was two of us. It had gone from a room full to two people. And it was me and him. And it was funny because I walked in and I said, "What do you want?" And Koichi said the same thing he'd done for the last two auditions. And I just did the same thing that I'd done for the last two auditions and said thank you to everybody and left. I didn't even get to the friggin' plane. My agent rang me and said, "You've got it. Don't go to Las Vegas. You're going to have to cancel the show." So, and I was doing the show in Las Vegas with a friend. I wasn't being paid because it was ours. So I had to sort of ring up and say, I've got to cancel this because now I'm actually doing a paid gig. And every one of the actors that was in that series with me, apart from the gentleman who passed away, is still so close, so tight, and such good friends. We are the only series that all the actors go everywhere together. If there's a show and they say, "We want Time Force," we all go. Every one of us, a whole team.
Plenty of hugging on that set then.
Oh, a lot of hugging. Oh, yeah. There was some very, interesting young ladies on that set. It was a lot of fun, though. We used to call it the who can pee up the wall the highest every time I walked on the set, because they would try to get me no matter what it took. And that was what was so much fun. None of them were in awe of me. They were like, we're going to bring this mother down, no matter what it takes. And it was like this competition. Who can screw up Vernon? And it was just fun. I mean, I loved it for the whole time I was doing it.
The fan base behind the whole Power Rangers thing's pretty rabid. Have you experienced much of that?
Seriously, you know what's so funny is that I'm considered not to be the villain and not to be the good guy, because at the end they turned me into a good guy. So now I'm not regarded as the villain. I'm regarded as the crossover. And it's the weirdest thing. They did a show over in New Zealand. It was a 2-part, and they brought a lot of the villains back into it, and then they brought a lot of the Red Rangers and Black Rangers and things like that back into it. And I happened to be talking to one of the producers, and I said, how come I'm not involved in this? And he said, what do you mean? I said, well, you're bringing back all the villains. Why aren't I going back? And he said, because you're not a villain. I went, excuse me? He said, yeah, we made you a good guy. You can't do it now. And it's like, what? I spent 12 months killing things, and now one friggin' episode where I'm a good guy, and that's it. My career's over. It was very funny.
Do you have your own action figure?
Yeah, I have Mad Max, 2 from Commando, 2 from the series. No, 3 from the series, because I've got the box game as well.
You know you've made it when you've got an action figure.
I know. That's what I used to say. Oh, I got an action figure. Oh, darn, I got 2 action. Oh, wow, I got 3. And people hate me when I do that, because people will say to me, I hear you got an action figure. No, I got 3. And they go, son of a bitch. To me, once again, it's like, you know, in the last 12 months, I've won 12 awards, 8 of them being Best Actor. I love it. Don't get me wrong. I think the fact that the audiences and the judges appreciate what I do to that degree, to give me an award for it, is wonderful. But it doesn't mean that to me. What it means is that what I've tried all my life to achieve, I'm getting there. I'm actually now doing work that people think is worthy of getting an award. So the award doesn't make me go, oh, look, I've got this award. It makes me go, I've made strides. I'm getting there.
What type of roles do you like to seek out these days? Just something that sounds fun and interesting, or is there particular films which you're on the lookout for?
I like roles where I play a character that I can work. I'm very much into enjoying what I do, so I don't have to do the role, so I'm more inclined. I mean, I play both good guys and villains. You know, I did a show with a Japanese director just before Christmas. In that, I play the villain, but he's a total interesting villain because he doesn't do anything villainous. He lets all the people that work for him do it.
Is he a bit Charles Manson-y, a bit of a puppeteer?
Yeah, it's that kind of, but in the finish, of course, I get knocked off because I am really the villain of the piece. 3 months prior to that, I did a film in New Mexico on the New Mexico border with Texas, sort of more in Texas than New Mexico, in which I played the surgeon. That was the character's name, the surgeon. And that was probably one of the, serious to God, one of the deepest villains I've ever got into. I mean, he was a pretty dark place to go. So, yeah, I love it. I really, and I've got back into directing. I'm directing as well. So I just finished co-directing a film called SOS, Ship of Souls, in which I played the lead as well. So I ended up directing about half of it with my partner. He was directing the whole thing, but he decided he just wanted to do camera and let me. So when I wasn't working in it, I was directing it. So it was fun. I enjoyed it. I had a ball.
Kind of in closing, Vernon, any plans to return to the stage singing?
No. The last time someone conned me into doing that was at a 21st birthday party, and the parents had known me, and they had conned their daughter into hassling the shit out of me. So I did a version of Stairway to Heaven. And that was it.
That was the curtain call.
And I said, this is my swan song. I am not doing this ever again. You know what? It was a part of my life that I loved. I really did. I've got so many good memories of it. I went through everything that I had, the drug craze, the whole bit, and I survived it. I managed to get out of it. I managed to get clean. So I had no regrets for what I did. I was stupid at times, but you know what? It was growing up, and it was all part of a learning process, and I learned. And now that's kind of gone. My wife's always trying to get me to sing, and I'm always sort of like, yeah, well, don't think so.
Just wait for the biopic that's coming out in a few years.
Yeah, right. But no, I'm probably the most contented human being that you would ever meet, because I have achieved more than I ever thought I would achieve in 3 lifetimes. I know that my mother's up in heaven looking down on me going, that's my son.
She's standing up and cheering every time.
Yep. Because everything I did was for my mother, because being a single mother, she supported me no matter what I did. She was right there and supported everything I did. And so every time the successes come and the accolades come, it's because of her, because of what she instilled in me, because of my grandfather and the things that he instilled in me to be aware of. And, his big thing was always be kind to the people you pass on the way up, because they're the ones kicking your ass on the way down. Just treat people the way you want to be treated. That's it. If you don't, then don't bitch when people turn on you. It's that simple. So I've had all those wonderful life lessons from the people who brought me up into this world, and I have never forgotten it. And, I always say that, because of my mother and George Miller, my life was screwed up. But what can I say? Uncle George, just a little fun one on George. I've always adored George Miller, and he loves my wife. And we were in Japan for the opening of Fury Road. They were doing Road Warrior, Mad Max, Fury Road. And they had some of the cast from the original one and me from Mad Max. And they didn't have anybody from Fury Road, but they were expecting maybe George would come to the question and answer we were doing. And nobody was really sure. So we were up on stage, and someone said to me from the audience, Mr. Wells, did you have input into your costume? And I went, well, and just as I said, well, his voice behind me went, he had nothing to do with it. It was all done by me and the costume department. I turned around, George is standing right behind me. And I went, oh, my God. And he went along the line to everybody and said hello to everybody by name. He remembered all their names, every one of them, all the way back. And he got to me. He gave me, this big bear hug and, how are you? What are you doing? And I said, I'm having a ball, sir. And I said, oh, by the way, someone in the front row wants to say hi. And he turned around. Grace was in the front row, and she sort of waved to him. And he walked off the stage down to where she was, picked her up out of her seat, gave her this big bear hug, and then stood there talking to him. And finally, someone said to him, Mr. Miller, we are running out of time. You have to be up on stage. And he went, oh, sorry. And he walked up, came back up on stage, and we all did our little wrap up. And then we went out to dinner. And that's the kind of person he is. He is a human being. He's not one of these people, I've made 23 major movies and I'm a lot better than any of you. He is us.
And how many years is that since you work with him? That's got to be, about 40 years, right? And there's still that relationship and that bond.
Oh, yeah, I can still ring him and he'll pick up the phone. He's just this wonderful, wonderful man. I mean, to me, he's no different. I mean, George was like that. Everybody I've worked with, major directors, has been like that. They have no thing about them of like, I am a director who is famous. I do this for a living. And this is what I need you to become part of what my vision is. And, Steven Spielberg's the same. I met Steven by backing across the stage when I was doing Innerspace. And Joe Dante was going, because he knew what I thought of Steven. And we're on the stage at 20th, and he's going, back up. And I'm like, okay, so I'm backing up. Yes, no further. And I'm thinking, I'm going to be like an inch tall in the bloody frame. What the hell? And back, and I bump into this person. I turn around. Oh, I'm so sorry. Oh, good God. And it was Steven Spielberg just sitting there smiling at me. And, of course, being this debonair, amazing human being, the first thing I said was, phone home? And he just looked at me and I went, oh, why did I say that? Why? And he cracked up. He thought it was the funniest thing.
You could have told him that Duel was better than Mad Max.
Yeah, that's what I should have said. But the funny thing is he thinks Mad Max was way better than it. And he thinks my role in Mad Max was one of those turning points in cinema. And he tells it to me. I was incredibly fortunate to be with the people I was with and was able to take, as George Miller says, 23 lines and turn it into a movie. He loves saying that to me. 23 lines turned into a bloody whole movie. It's just, right place, right time, situation. I never planned it. I never looked for it. It happened. And you know what? I'm so goddamn happy it did. I think I'm blessed in what I've had. I've had an amazing career that continues to this day. I'm signed on to 5 films this year. I mean, it amazes me. I get up in the morning and look at this ugly face in the mirror and go, what the hell would people hire me for? And I was talking to a friend of mine, a director, and I said to him, why do you keep hiring me? And he went, well, you finally grew up. And I sort of looked at him and thought, that was mean. And then suddenly I realized what he meant is that I had gone past the, oh, God, can I do this? Oh, boy, I'll have to really make this an act really hard, to, I don't give a shit. I know what I'm doing. I know exactly what I'm doing. I'm going to go out there and I'm going to do my job. Why should I be worried about it? And so there's a whole different attitude that comes with that, where you're relaxed. Your body's relaxed, your mind's relaxed. Everything in you is relaxed because you understand what you're doing. And it took me a long time to get to that point. And that was what his point was, that finally I had grown up and that I didn't worry. I didn't care. I went out there and did my job and did it well. Some people get there. I'm fortunate I got there. A lot of people don't. They struggle all their lives and they get into drugs and alcohol and things to try to quiet that pain. And I feel sorry for people like that, because this business, as you probably very well know, is suicide. You get into this business, it will tear you into very small pieces, and then it will spit you out, and it doesn't give a shit. And we have to understand that. And I think marrying my wife was the greatest godsend that ever came. She's Japanese American and Buddhist. So she's put this whole different attitude into my brain about who I am, where I am, and what I'm doing, so that I don't look for the adulation. I don't look for people saying, oh, that was so cool. What I look for is my co-stars, when I'm talking to them, going, was that okay? Did we get that? Are you happy with what we just did? Because I'm not that interested in what I'm doing, because I know that I can do what I'm doing. It's more, did what I was doing fit in with what you're doing, so we made it look really good? And that's the whole bent. And it takes a long time to get to that point. And I'm very fortunate that while I'm still here on Earth, I managed to get there. And I'm having a ball, just so you know. I'm having a ball. I just love going on set and working and doing my thing. And
never stop, sir. Never stop. Keep going.
I'm going to be 900 and still doing it, damn it.
Have you got a good diary? Who looks after your diary?
Yeah, it's called my wife. She's always saying to me, what are you doing so I can put it down in here so we both know where you are? And I go, hang on, I have to go through all my paperwork to find out what I'm actually doing. Because if it was up to me, it was like this morning, I was, 10 minutes late with you. I was kind of like, oh, I got to do this, this, and this. And I was just sitting here, actually, working on something, and I was flicking through my thing, and your name came up, and I went, oh, shit! So it was at panic stations for a minute.
Well, I appreciate you doing it. It's been lovely to chat to you, Ben, and it's great to see you so busy and still so excited about everything.
Like I said, I'm blessed. I can't say anything else. I've been fortunate. I'm convinced my mother's up there pulling the strings. She always was all my life, so I don't think it's changed once she's gone. I just enjoy what I'm doing, and I'm thankful that I can get to do what I enjoy. Yeah, and I get to talk to people like you.
It's all good. That's a bonus.
Yeah. Nothing bad about it, my friend.
Well, you enjoy the rest of your day, sir. Thanks ever so much for your time. I've loved it.
Thank you, sir. It's my pleasure. And anytime.
Thanks so much to Vernon Wells for sharing his journey from rock and roll singer to 80s movie villain right here on the Straight to Video podcast. What a treat to hear all about his journey, and want to thank him for sharing it with us. Hopefully that got you in the mood to revisit Mad Max 2, Commando or Weird Science, which are all amazing to this day, and keep an eye out for him in one of the many new films he has in production, either in front or behind the camera. So that is all for today's episode of the Straight to Video podcast. Thanks as always for tuning in, and look out for many more great chats coming over the next few weeks as they drop every Tuesday and Friday. So be sure to like, follow and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts, and I look forward to chatting with you all again soon.